Imagine, if you will, a city of dazzling wealth and unmatched beauty, a place where the very air seems to shimmer with the promise of greatness. Picture a metropolis where the streets are lined with marble, where golden domes catch the first light of dawn, and where the hum of life is punctuated by the tolling of church bells and the calls of merchants from distant lands. This is Constantinople, the legendary jewel of the Byzantine Empire, as it stood in the year 1202. At the crossroads of continents and cultures, it was a city that seemed to defy the passage of time, its splendor undimmed by the centuries. For centuries, this magnificent city stood as a beacon of civilization, radiating knowledge, art, and culture throughout the medieval world. Its libraries housed the wisdom of the ancients, its churches dazzled with mosaics of gold and glass, and its scholars debated philosophy, science, and theology beneath soaring domes. Here the legacy of Rome lived on, preserved and enriched by generations of emperors, artists, and thinkers. Constantinople's strategic location on the Bosporus Strait made it a vital crossroads of trade between East and West. Every day, ships from across the Mediterranean and beyond crowded its harbors, bringing silks from China, spices from India, furs from the north, and gold from Africa. The city thrived as a melting pot of languages, religions, and ideas, its markets alive with the energy of commerce and exchange. Its mighty walls, the legendary Theodosian walls, had repelled countless invaders over the centuries. These formidable fortifications, manned day and night by vigilant guards, earned Constantinople a reputation as an impenetrable fortress. Many had tried to breach its defenses, but few had even come close. Life within the city bustled with energy and hope. Citizens strolled through vibrant markets, artisans crafted wonders in their workshops, and children played in the shadow of ancient monuments. Constantinople was a city that seemed destined to endure forever, its people confident in the strength of their home and the wisdom of their rulers. Yet, beneath this sense of security, a shadow was growing. Little did the citizens of Constantinople know that danger lurked on the horizon, not from the familiar threat of Islamic armies, but from an unexpected and unsettling source. Fellow Christians, united under the banner of the cross. A vast army of crusaders, warriors sworn to defend the faith and liberate the Holy Land, was now approaching the city's gates. Their armor gleamed in the sunlight, their banners fluttered with the symbols of Christendom, and their leaders spoke of holy purpose and divine mission. But as the Crusaders drew closer, their noble intentions began to unravel. Greed, political intrigue, and personal ambition crept into their ranks. The promise of gold and glory proved too tempting, and soon, the holy cause for which they had set out was overshadowed by darker motives. The stage was set for a betrayal of unimaginable proportions. The story of the Fourth Crusade is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that even the noblest of causes can be corrupted by human failings. It is a tale of shifting alliances, broken promises, and the tragic consequences that follow when ambition outweighs principle. It is a story of ambition, greed, and the devastating consequences of unchecked power. The fall of Constantinople would send shockwaves through the world, changing the course of history and leaving scars that would endure for generations. Even today, centuries after the events that unfolded beneath the city's ancient walls, the story of Constantinople's betrayal and fall continues to resonate. It serves as a powerful lesson about the fragility of civilization, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the enduring legacy of one of history's greatest cities. In the heart of medieval Europe, a powerful movement had taken hold: the Crusades. These were not just wars, but a series of epic journeys that would shape the destiny of nations and faiths for centuries to come. The air was thick with anticipation, as rumors of holy war and the promise of salvation spread from bustling cities to the quietest rural villages. Driven by religious fervor and a desire to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control, thousands of knights, soldiers, and pilgrims embarked on perilous journeys to the east. For many, this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to escape the hardships of medieval life, to seek adventure, and to fulfill what they believed was a sacred duty. The roads leading out of Europe teemed with hopeful faces, some seeking redemption, others glory, and many simply swept up in the tide of history. These were not mere military campaigns, they were seen as holy missions sanctioned by the Pope himself. The Church promised spiritual rewards for those who took up the cross, and the words of priests echoed through stone cathedrals, urging the faithful to join the cause. the Crusades became a rallying cry that united people across kingdoms and social classes, binding them together in a common purpose. To die on a crusade was to gain a guaranteed place in heaven. This promise was a powerful motivator in an age when life was often short and uncertain. The idea of eternal salvation, of being remembered as a hero of Christendom, inspired countless men to leave behind their families and risk everything. The Crusaders' vow was not taken lightly, it was a commitment that would define the rest of their lives. The Fourth Crusade, launched in 1202, was no different in its initial aims. Like those before it, it was conceived as a mission to liberate Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim rule. Yet, beneath the surface, new forces were at play: political ambitions, economic interests, and the growing influence of powerful city-states would soon steer the crusade in unexpected directions. Pope Innocent III called upon the Christian world to rally once more, to aid their brethren in the East and wrest back control of Jerusalem. His words carried immense weight, and his call to arms echoed across Europe. Monarchs, nobles, and commoners alike listened as papal envoys spread the message, igniting a wave of enthusiasm and hope. The response was overwhelming, as entire communities pledged their support and resources to the cause. From across Europe, men answered the call, eager to prove their faith and seek glory on the battlefield. Blacksmiths worked day and night to forge armor and weapons, while families bid tearful farewells to sons, fathers, and brothers. The Crusaders gathered under colorful banners, their spirits high and their hearts full of purpose. For many, this was the greatest adventure they could ever imagine, a chance to change the world and secure their place in history. Little did they know that their journey would take an unexpected and tragic turn, one that would forever stain the legacy of the Crusades. The path ahead was fraught with danger, not just from enemies, but from hunger, disease, and the harsh realities of travel. As the Crusaders pressed onward, uncertainty and doubt began to creep in, foreshadowing the trials that awaited them. The Crusaders, however, faced a logistical challenge. Organizing such a massive expedition required careful planning and vast resources. Leaders debated routes, supplies, and strategy, knowing that a single misstep could doom the entire mission. The sheer scale of the operation was unprecedented, and the pressure to succeed weighed heavily on everyone involved. Transporting a large army across land and sea was an expensive undertaking. The Crusaders needed ships, food, weapons, and money, more than most could ever hope to gather on their own. Negotiations with merchants and financiers became as crucial as any battle, as the fate of the crusade now depended on securing the means to reach the Holy Land. Enter Venice, a maritime power with a fleet of ships and a reputation for shrewd dealing. The Venetians saw the Crusaders' predicament as a golden opportunity. Their bustling harbors and skilled sailors made them the perfect partners for such a grand venture, but their terms would come at a steep cost. The Venetians saw an opportunity in the Crusaders' predicament, agreeing to ferry them east for a hefty price. Contracts were drawn up, fortunes exchanged hands, and the Crusaders placed their trust in the hands of foreign merchants. This alliance, born of necessity, would soon test the resolve and unity of the crusading army. As the Crusaders waited in Venice, tensions began to rise. Delays, mounting debts, and cultural differences strained the fragile partnership. The dream of a united Christian army began to fray at the edges, as leaders struggled to keep their followers focused and hopeful. This fateful agreement would set in motion a chain of events with devastating consequences. The stage was set for a journey that would not only alter the course of the crusade, but also change the fate of empires and the very fabric of medieval Europe. Venice, a city built on trade and ambition, stood as a beacon of power in the medieval world. It was ruled by the Doge Enrico Dandolo, a cunning and ruthless leader. The Venetians had agreed to transport the Crusader army for a fee of 85,000 silver marks, an astronomical sum in those days. However, when the Crusaders arrived in Venice, they found themselves unable to pay the full amount. Dandolo, a shrewd businessman, saw an opportunity to exploit their predicament. He offered the Crusaders a proposition, a postponement of their debt in exchange for a service. The Venetians, it turned out, had their own score to settle. Zara, a prosperous Christian city on the Dalmatian coast, had recently rebelled against Venetian rule. Dandolo demanded that the Crusaders help him reclaim Zara before transporting them to the Holy Land. This proposal placed the Crusaders in a moral quandary. How could they, soldiers of Christ, attack a Christian city, especially one that had no involvement in the conflict in the Holy Land? Many within the Crusader ranks protested, arguing that their swords should only be drawn against the enemies of the faith. But the lure of reaching the Holy Land, combined with their financial dependence on Venice, proved too strong for some. The decision to attack Zara marked a pivotal and deeply controversial turning point for the Fourth Crusade, one that would forever alter the course of the expedition and the very nature of crusading itself. What began as a holy mission to reclaim Jerusalem was now mired in political intrigue and moral ambiguity as the Crusaders found themselves compelled to wage war against a fellow Christian city at the behest of their Venetian allies. Crossing this moral Rubicon, the Crusaders realized there would be no turning back. The siege of Zara was not just a military maneuver, it was a profound spiritual crisis, forcing knights and leaders alike to question the righteousness of their cause. The siege itself was swift, relentless, and devastating. Crusader forces, driven by desperation and the need to fulfill their obligations to Venice, stormed the city with overwhelming force. The defenders, caught off guard by the ferocity of the attack, were quickly overwhelmed. Flames consumed homes and churches, and the cries of the innocent echoed through the streets. In the end, the Crusaders emerged victorious, and Zara was subjugated to Venetian control. The banners of Venice fluttered triumphantly over the smoldering ruins, a stark symbol of the new priorities guiding the crusade. Yet, for many Crusaders this victory was hollow. The aftermath was filled with regret and soul-searching. They had not liberated the Holy Land, nor had they struck a blow against the infidel. Instead, they had turned their swords against fellow Christians, leaving a bitter taste that would haunt them for years to come. The streets of Zara ran red with Christian blood, and the wounded limped through the ruins, haunted by the knowledge that their actions had been driven not by faith, but by necessity and greed. The Crusaders prayed for forgiveness in the shattered churches, wrestling with the realization that their campaign had strayed far from its sacred origins. Instead of fighting for the glory of God, they had become pawns in a game of Venetian gold and political expediency. The promise of riches and influence had overshadowed their spiritual mission. With Zara behind them, the Crusaders tried to refocus on their original goal, the liberation of Jerusalem and the Holy Land. But the path ahead was now clouded with uncertainty and doubt. As they prepared to set sail once more, the Crusaders could not have foreseen that their journey would soon take another dramatic and unexpected detour, one that would shake the foundations of Christendom itself. This time, their eyes turned not to Egypt or Jerusalem, but to the greatest city in the Christian world, Constantinople. The very idea was audacious, almost unthinkable, to lay siege to the heart of Eastern Christendom. The seed of this plan was planted by Alexios Angelos, a Byzantine prince in exile, who approached the Crusader leaders with a bold and tempting proposal. Alexios's father, Isaac II Angelos, had been deposed and blinded in a violent coup, leaving the throne of Byzantium in the hands of a usurper. Desperate to reclaim his birthright, Alexios offered the Crusaders a deal that would change the fate of empires. He promised them unimaginable wealth, enough gold to pay their debts and fund their campaign to the Holy Land. In addition, he pledged military support and supplies, resources the Crusaders desperately needed. Alexios also vowed to provide troops and ships, and to join the crusade himself, turning the might of Byzantium toward the liberation of Jerusalem. Most tantalizing of all, he promised to heal the centuries-old rift between the Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic churches, submitting the Byzantine Church to the authority of the Pope in Rome. All he asked in return was that the Crusaders help him reclaim his father's throne in Constantinople. The proposal sparked fierce debate and agonizing soul-searching among the Crusader leaders. Some saw it as a divine opportunity to unite Christendom and secure the resources they so desperately needed. Others recoiled at the thought of attacking the greatest Christian city in the world. On one hand, the chance to heal the schism and gain the means to finally reach Jerusalem was almost irresistible. The Crusaders were exhausted, indebted, and in need of hope. On the other, the prospect of turning their swords against Constantinople, a city renowned for its piety, wealth, and beauty, seemed like an act of unimaginable sacrilege, a betrayal of everything the crusade was meant to stand for. The Crusaders now stood at a crossroads, torn between the promise of glory and unity, and the fear of committing a sin that would echo through history.